Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassell. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. And good evening once again, and welcome to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. I am your host, Willie Hassell, your gatekeeper to the dark side, your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And yes, she is the lovely, she is the mystical, she is the mysterious. She is just flying in from the phone into her seat, and there she is. Good evening, Lynn Nickerson.
I just landed.
I know you did. I noticed that.
The Lynn has landed.
The Lynn has landed. Okay.
I'm doing fine, except that it's cold.
Oh, baby, it's cold outside.
Oh. And more snow. Do you believe that? More snow.
No, I don't.
One night we're going to get an inch, and then we're going to be followed by 8 to 12 inches. The next day, Tuesday, Monday.
I have my ticket for Bermuda all bought. You coming?
Well, yeah. Well, you know, I wouldn't have said that like maybe this morning. I was listening to another radio station, if you can believe that.
No, I don't believe that.
And their weather report said Sunday it was going to reach 50.
Really?
Honestly, yes.
Well, I like their weather report much better.
I'm going to pick that one.
Yeah.
That's the one I like.
Yeah, me too. So, anyways, in the meantime, we do have a great guest tonight. And
yes.
You know what I'm going to do?
What's that?
I'm going to announce her right now.
Okay.
I'm going to do a little intro. So tonight on the show, it is a pleasure to welcome Sherri Brake. Sherri is an author, lecturer, and paranormal investigator. She owns and operates the award-winning Haunted Heartland Tours. She has instructed classes on the paranormal, as well as consulting on some paranormal television shows. Sherri has authored 6 books on such haunted places as the Ohio State Reformatory, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and the West Virginia Penitentiary at Moundsville. She is joining us tonight with her stories of hauntings, histories, and all things paranormal. So shall we welcome right now to the show, Sherri Brake. Good evening, Sherri.
Good evening, Sherri.
Good evening, Willie and Lynn. Thank you for having me tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Glad you could make it. Glad you had room in your schedule for us.
Thank you for joining us.
Problem.
You're a very busy person.
Yeah, you know, idle hands are the devil's tools or something like that.
I've heard something like that.
All right.
I try to keep really busy, even in the off-season.
Yeah.
You know, some of these buildings that we do ghost hunts in, they don't have heat.
Right.
And they can be pretty terrible from, you know, the middle of November through the beginning of March.
And you do it right through the winter?
I'm sorry?
You do it right through the winter?
Well, I do other things through the wintertime. I work on writing books, and I instruct some classes.
Great.
And, you know, I'm always busy researching that next haunted location.
Yeah.
There's always that next location, huh?
That's right. You know, I love the big buildings, the well-known locations to take people to, but I also love those little out-of-the-way places, the places that you don't really see featured on a lot of the normal paranormal television shows and things like that. So I'm always looking for a new place for folks, an intriguing place to take them to.
Well, Sherri, tell us, how did you get involved in this?
Well, I've always been interested in the unusual. back growing up in Ohio in the 1960s and the 70s, I would watch his television shows like The Outer Limits.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and the
Twilight Zone.
And things like that. And I was just always interested in weird subjects. Not every kid who is, 8, 9, 10 years old goes to the library and gets books on extraterrestrials and UFOs and, the witchcraft trials and the pyramids and things like that. So I've always been just kind of a curious person. When I started reenacting the Civil War back in the 1990s, it really fueled my love for history.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the dark history. I love the true history, things that happened, the battles that were fought, even weird things like the executions that took place back in the frontier times. And it's just always been an interest of mine to kind of blend the history with the paranormal. I started doing investigations back in my early 20s, and fueled with that with my Civil War work that I was doing in the reenacting, I kind of thought, it'd be neat to kind of mix the two together and do a haunted walking tour, like a lot of people have taken. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have taken, haunted walking tours in Massachusetts or, in Charleston, South Carolina, places like that. And I did that. That was the very first thing that I did was a haunted walking tour.
So did you do
a website and invited people to come and meet with me and do this walk, and it sold out.
Oh my!
And, that surprised me. This was back before any type of ghost hunting show was on television.
So you did all the research yourself, just out of your own interest, right?
Oh yes, very much so. And many of these locations that I take people to, I had investigated years before, so I had quite a large file system on different investigations, different haunted locations, and things like that. So one thing kind of led from the other. I started off with the walking tours, and then I started doing bus tours and overnighters and excursions to Gettysburg, different places like that, and now I'm doing them to Ireland and Scotland.
Yeah, we were going to get to that.
And they're sold out, too, aren't they?
They're sold out.
Yeah, the first one is in the spring of 2016, and it actually sold out in 5 minutes online.
Oh, my gosh.
I know, right?
I mean, because those aren't cheap, You've got the airfare over the ocean, and those don't come cheap.
Right.
That's
right,
amazing.
Right. And so I was thrilled. I mean, quite a few of the people that were coming said, hey, we're interested in the paranormal, but we're really into the whole history of Ireland and Scotland. And we're going to be sure to stop at quite a few castles and old cemeteries, and we even chartered a boat to take us across Loch Ness.
Oh, great.
So,
but tell me, Sherri, have you done research of the various places that you're going to go on these tours in Ireland and Scotland?
Yes, I was lucky to be able to go over there last February and March. It was a little chilly. It was a little cold.
I bet it was.
But you can't beat taking a boat ride across Loch Ness, whether it's raining or not.
It must be just
I'm sure it's like a bucket
amazing
list item.
Wow. So what is it? It's they're each like a 10-day tour?
Yes. Yeah, Lynn, it's 10 days, 9 nights. We fly out of Chicago, and we land in Dublin. And the very first thing that we do is we head to the Guinness factory.
Oh.
Whoa.
Okay.
Just for samples?
Is that for hauntings or a little sample?
Oh, come on, Willie. What do you think?
Okay.
I always laugh and I say I try not to mix spirits with spirits, but I think that's going to be one occasion where we do so.
I think that's acceptable.
Yeah, I think you can get away with that. Sure, why not?
So you're doing this full time now, aren't you? Everything,
the
investigating.
For 12 years now. I started Haunted Heartland Tours 12 years ago, and it's pretty much been a year-round occupation. My mom and dad always said try to find something that you don't really feel is work, and you enjoy it, and you'll never have to work a day in your life. And for the last 12 years, I've just been lucky enough to kind of fall into this niche, and I've got quite a following of people that absolutely love to explore these locations, and it's pretty cool. It's like one big family. You see the same people time and time again, and they bring their kids, and then the next thing you know, you've got grandkids coming and all kinds of things. It's pretty cool.
When you first started doing investigations, you said you were in your 20s, right?
Yes.
What were you using? Do you feel that you have any psychic ability yourself?
I would say I am not a psychic, first of all. But I become sensitive to locations that I frequent
Really?
often. And I think, and it's probably like what you guys have experienced too, when you go to a certain place, you know the way that that location feels. You know, as you walk throughout the building, what feels normal and what feels not so normal. So I can kind of pick up on how different certain areas feel. Say, for instance, we are at the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville, West Virginia. Pretty much there's certain rooms that I know aren't going to be active for the most part, but when I do walk into them, if I get a feeling like I can't take a deep breath or a heaviness on my chest, or almost a feeling like all the air gets sucked out of the room, that to me tells me that there is more energy in that room. And I'll tell folks, you know, and once I explain to them how it feels to me, then there's sometimes several people in the group that'll say, hey, I was just feeling that myself. Is that something I need to tune into? And I will tell them yes. So I'm not psychic, but I'd like to say I'm probably just a little bit sensitive.
And since you brought up the prison, what part of the prison do you think personally is the most haunted or
active?
Yeah.
At Moundsville, you mean?
Well, it can change. There's some nights that it is a quiet building, and other nights it can be very heavy, very, very busy as far as paranormal activity. The most popular place that people see on television that they really want to explore is typically the Sugar Shack.
Yeah.
And the Sugar Shack is in the basement area of the West Virginia Penitentiary. And that prison was built in 1866 by convict labor. And some of those prisoners were actually Confederate soldiers that had been held locally. And when they built the prison, there was a lot of tragedy that happened. There were men that died. There were people that were beaten. Some of them were buried in unmarked graves. There's different legends about some of the bodies possibly still being buried in unmarked graves there on the property. So I'd have to say the Sugar Shack is probably the area that people want to go investigate.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound sweet to me, though. So what is the Sugar Shack?
Well, the Sugar Shack, first of all, I should probably tell you exactly what that is. It's a very large room in the basement of the building, and it was used as the indoor recreational area for the prisoners. It had a jukebox. It had some pool tables. So this was an area that the inmates could go to if the weather was bad outside. There were no murders that were committed that we know of in the Sugar Shack, but there was a lot of homosexual activity, and there were a lot of assaults that took place. But to me, the Sugar Shack is not the most active place, although you see it a lot on the television shows. I would have to say over the last 12 years that I've been going there, it's typically the boiler room or the psychiatric ward, which is on the second story.
That's what I was going to say, the infirmary to me.
Yes.
It always just feels like you're just surrounded. And,
yes. It's large, empty rooms where the wards were located at, but sometimes when you step in there, you feel like there is a lot going on around you.
Atmosphere feels heavy.
You just feel like
psych ward.
Yeah, you just feel like you're surrounded by something, and there's just like noises coming from all around the room.
Oh yeah, very very much so. Willie, I take it you've been there before a couple of times.
Yes, 3 times now. I think I actually did my own investigation. I don't know, a year and a half ago. I rented the place one night myself.
What did you think when you first pulled up there at the prison and you looked at the building?
Well, of course, I had already seen it on Ghost Adventures.
Right.
And I said, oh, wow, this is it. I said, I got to get in here and, and
did it look foreboding to you, though?
Oh, yeah. It is.
I bet it looks like a big old castle, doesn't it?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Gothic fortress.
Gothic,
You look at it, the walls are, 28 feet high. It's made from sandstone that was quarried locally. And some of the walls are as thick as 5 feet. And it actually, the stone itself goes down into the ground a good 6-7 feet to prevent some of the inmates from tunneling out.
Oh, yeah.
So, but it's one of those places that when you visit, you can almost feel the negative energy. I mean, at times it's almost palpable. They had over 998 murders.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
these were documented. These weren't just like, oh, hey, yeah, somebody fell off of tier 3. My buddy told me 20 years ago or something like that. These are actually documented murders and suicides. So you have almost 1,000 of those happening. Then you've got 85 hangings of executions, and then you've got 9 electrocutions for executions. So, you can see why the American Justice Department actually had it on their list of the most violent prisons in America,
Really?
even above Alcatraz at one time.
Well, what I was going to ask you, Sherri, how about your personal experience as far as negative entities annoying you or bothering you while you were there?
Well, I'd have to say at the prison or in general, are you talking?
With this at Moundsville.
At Moundsville. Being a female and walking into a facility like that where there were male inmates, at times you can feel a little bit uncomfortable when you're by yourself. Now, I don't frighten easily. A lot of the times I'll walk the halls and not even use a flashlight just because I'm so used to the hallways and the cells. But I have had my hair pulled very hard in the North Hall area. And, Willie, you probably remember North Hall. That was where the worst of the worst were kept.
Oh, yes, right.
In the prison, and it reminds you almost like a dog yard. I mean, you have chain link fence horizontally up above your head at about 6 foot high, because some of the inmates would be thrown off those upper tiers.
Oh.
And that would help prevent the bodies from hitting the ground below. They would hit that chain link fence.
Oh, is that why they have that there? Oh, okay.
But yeah,
morbid.
I've been touched there. I've had my hair pulled. The one night that I had my hair pulled, it was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I had 45 people in the prison with me, and it was a hot summer night, and North Hall was just really, really uncomfortable to be in. So not too many people had ventured into there that night. And I was just walking up the cells and stepped into a cell. I was reading some of the graffiti on the wall, and something grabbed my hair. Now, my hair is almost down to my waist, so it tugged really hard. I turned around thinking it was one of my tour guests who had popped in behind me there, and there was nobody behind me in the cell. So that definitely got my attention. And you know what? With this paranormal activity, most of the time when it happens, you're never exactly prepared for it.
I wouldn't imagine. You're always caught off guard somehow. Something weird happens that you're not expecting.
You are. I didn't have my voice recorder running. I didn't have a camera ready. I was just in there nonchalantly reading graffiti on the wall and had that happen to me. So it's an attention getter. I've had some of the tour guests go with me who are correctional officers. And I'll tell you what, I love to hang out with them.
Why?
When we do an investigation there, I love to be sitting in a cell next to a cop because something's going to happen.
Yeah, I just bet. I bet.
Yeah, and they have all the inside information too as to what did go on there. Yeah.
They do, and they know what to say to get under somebody's skin.
Yeah.
I mean, they know the cop talk. They know that they know the correctional officer lingo. What to use and to get a rise out of whatever is there.
Do you have a recollection that you'd like to tell us about?
Oh, my gosh. I'll tell you what. I was with a female officer one evening, and we had stepped into Red Snyder's cell. Now, if you've seen the Ghost Adventures episode, or if you've read my book that I did on the pen or just did your own research, Red Snyder's one of the most notorious inmates that were held there at Moundsville. He had murdered his father and cut him up and put him in a suitcase and ended up being committed, of course, for murder there. And he was just a regular, bad you-know-what. nobody liked to be around Red because they weren't sure when his temper would go off.
Yeah, he was the one, the cell with all the graffiti on the wall. Is that the one?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
he was also the leader of the Aryan Brotherhood
Oh, yeah.
at Moundsville. So, he was a bigwig, and there was a lot of people that were afraid of him. So this one evening, it was pretty cold that night. We could see our breath. I do remember that. So it was probably a November ghost hunt. And the correctional officer that I was telling you about, the female, she was sitting next to me in Red's room. And she had turned on her digital voice recorder. And I'm sitting there, and she's like, she said, this is my second ghost hunt. She said, I'm so excited to be here in the prison. And of course, her recorder is going on and on. And she's like, I'm just really excited to be here with you tonight. And you can hear me say, yes, I'm glad that you're here. And you hear a man's voice go, me too.
Oh, jeez.
And, of course, at that time, we didn't hear it with our ears.
Mm-hmm.
And then she called me back the next day, and she played it for me over the phone. And she said, I'm so glad that I did not listen to any of my recordings until today. And I said, why is that? And she says, because I would have immediately left the building.
Which, really?
Yeah, it really freaked her out. And, this is one thing I say in my paranormal classes that I instruct. Telling people about EVP is one thing. Telling them how to capture, how to collect it, how to analyze it is one thing. But when you know for a fact that you're sitting in a room and there's nobody else in that room with you, and you capture an intelligent response like the one that we got, it can really make you question quite a few things.
It's unnerving.
Yeah.
And you either get bit by the bug, meaning the paranormal bug,
Right.
or you don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah. That's one thing about EVPs. I mean, you can hear the greatest EVPs in the world, but if you didn't actually get them yourself, you're going to question them.
It doesn't have the same effect.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
And when you're there, generally speaking, where other individuals are if you're by yourself, so you can account for other people, and then you realize, oh my gosh, that's from another world.
Yeah.
Yes. And, my daughter, she's a big skeptic. She was about 17 years old, and she was at the prison with me, and I had actually instructed a ghost hunting class for the prison that night. And I had a small group. There was probably about 20 females. This was an all-girl class. And, my daughter sat there throughout the entire class and just kind of rolled her eyes at me, because she's like, oh, here Mom is going on and on about capturing these ghost voices and yada, yada, yada. So we were done with the class. Everybody was taking off to go explore. And I gave my daughter the old-fashioned cassette recorder.
Mm-hmm.
I said, here. I said, you can take this. I said, I'm going to turn it on record, and I just want you to walk around and just talk and ask some questions. My daughter's like, oh, yeah, whatever. So she records maybe a half an hour. I think she just did the one side of the cassette tape. And we were on the drive home that night, and not only did I have a CD player in the car, but I had a cassette deck as well. So we popped it in there, and we're, driving down the highway. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's still dark out. And we're listening, and I'm hearing my daughter say things like, oh, yeah, Mom's here, and so are all these nutty people, and they want me to get a ghost voice, and I don't believe in this. And she asks a couple questions, and then she asks, are you, let me try to remember the right phrasing, are you okay that we're here tonight, is what she asks. Are you okay that we're here tonight? And you hear a man's voice. Now remember, there were all females that night.
Mm.
You hear a man's voice say, I love you.
Whoa.
And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and she screamed.
Oh, really?
Like, oh, my God, because she knew she was by herself. And she's like, what the heck was that? And I rewound it. And I was a little upset, because here's my 17-year-old daughter, and here's some macho convict spirit energy or whatever that's around my daughter. And it kind of upset me a little bit. But I think it turned her from a non-believer to a believer when she heard that capture.
Yeah, it does. That's the way it affects you. It gets under your skin.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when you say, well, there really is something going on here. When we first started investigating, my brother was a complete skeptic.
Yeah, he was.
But he's been turned around in the last 5 years or so.
Sherry,
Did he have personal experiences then, Willie, that changed his mind?
Yeah, he did have a couple, and a lot of it is from EVPs, which voices that he knew were not there, yet they showed up. But he did have a couple of experiences too. So he's completely turned around.
Yeah, and I find my technique changing throughout the year too, as far as equipment. I know back when I first started in my early 20s, it was just a camera and a notepad.
Oh, I was going to ask you if, other than your own psychic sensitivity, what did you use for equipment? So you were really simple.
Very, very simple back in the early days. And then when I started this as a business, I started buying up equipment left and right. On some of these tours, I actually give out equipment for everybody to use. So I would have a multitude of different types of equipment. I'd have various EMF meters for folks to try to use. I would also instruct a little mini class on dowsing, and we would pass out dowsing rods for everybody.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
And then we would also touch on pendulum use, just so that they could kind of learn the whole thing about energies and auras and things like that. So it was kind of like a little blend of the science, and then a little blend of the metaphysical world as well. Because some people are more science
oriented.
They like holding something in their hand like that's got lights and bells and whistles on it. And other people really enjoyed learning how to use the dowsing rods or the pendulums. And then I just let them make up their mind.
Yeah, and they really like the hands-on. They get, it's interactive. They get involved and they get engaged.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I do cemetery tours in Ohio, and that's one of the things that I show folks how to do. And it surprised me that the cemetery was very open to me, number one, doing these tours at night. And, of course, I would also give them funds. We would rent the cemetery for the 2 hours, so that helped them out.
Yeah.
But they were very much into the use of dowsing rods because their very own caretaker would use dowsing rods to find the end of the vault.
Oh, my.
So that when he would dig a grave, if there was any question whatsoever about the placement of that body and the placement of that vault, he would use the dowsing rods to go around the perimeter of the vault. So he knew, where not to dig when they would dig for the grave next to it. I thought that was pretty fascinating.
Really interesting. Sherri, we're at the bottom of the hour. We're going to have to take a really quick break here. We're going to play a little bit of music, and then we're going to come right back. So don't go anywhere.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you.
Supernatural Magazine, the UK's newest paranormal magazine, provides support to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. It is the magazine's goal to bring every aspect of supernatural news and research from around the world under one roof to create a universal platform for all those interested in the supernatural. More information is available at supernaturalmagazine.com.
You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM, and we'll be right back after this short break.
Welcome back to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM in Portsmouth, West End. And from the community calendar, the Piscataqua Fish and Game Club in Greenland is a 30-year-old nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting outdoor pursuits and the protection of New Hampshire wildlife. The club sponsors several events throughout the year and holds regular meetings on the third Tuesday of each month. For details about membership, hunter safety courses, meeting schedules, and other events, information is online at piscataqua-club.org. And Lynn, do you have some upcoming guests for us?
Yeah, our upcoming guest list starts with February 7th, and we're welcoming Rick Osman, who is a known researcher of giants in the Ohio Valley. And he addresses this issue in The Graves of the Golden Bear, Ancient Fortresses and Monuments of the Ohio Valley. So we're hoping that Rick can shed some light on these giants, where they came from, and what eventually became of them. On February 14th, for their third appearance, we're welcoming Tom D'Agostino and his wife Arlene Nicholson, and they're authors of at least 13 books to date on New England paranormal activity, and they'll be entertaining us with their latest ghostly investigations. On February 21st, with the types of symbolism popularized recently in books like The Da Vinci Code, author Robert Sullivan will join us to discuss his latest book titled Cinema Symbolism.
Usually it's me that you have to.
Yeah, got my tongue twisted. So it isn't just Freemason symbolism, it's symbolism that is all throughout. It's like subliminal suggestion, the book, which is symbolism in media. On February 28th, we'll be joined by two men from law enforcement in Arizona, and their names are Sergeant Milford Jr. and retired Lieutenant John Dover, who have offered to share their strange and paranormal experiences while in the line of duty as rangers for the Navajo Nation in Arizona. On March 7th, Mary Joyce joins us to discuss some of the interesting topics found on her website titled Sky Ships over Cachers.com. And Cachers is a town in North Carolina, and currently they're having many ongoing UFO sightings. And we'll also touch on the subject of one of her latest books, which takes a close look at the little people of Cherokee legend. And then last but not least, we've got March 14th, and Preston Dennett, who is a longtime MUFON investigator and author of many books on UFOs, will be making his third appearance on Spirit Radio to more closely explore the UFO phenomenon associated with New Mexico in particular, as presented in a recent release titled UFOs over New Mexico. And that's our upcoming guest list.
Okay, and so that's who is coming up on the broadcast. But tonight, we are going to go back to the phone right now for our guest, Sherri Brake. Welcome back, Sherri.
Thank you.
Hi, Sherri. Well, we were talking about dowsing rods in the cemetery. Can you tell me, what are they using for dowsing rods? Copper?
Well, you can use basically anything that you want. There's some belief that copper is a good conductor of the energy, so some dowsers really prefer to use copper. When I instruct my ghost hunting classes and when we do the tours and I hand out dowsing rods, I use just simple clothes hangers that have been cut.
Really?
And what I do is I just bend them. I use L rods. There's Y rods, which is basically would be like a branch from a tree. That's what most people think of when they hear of a water dowser or somebody that uses a divining rod. They're familiar with the old style, which is cutting a Y branch and using that to find water. L rods are basically a piece of metal that has been shaped into an L, and you put the small part in your hand, and then of course the long part is what you use, and it's held horizontal. You hold them like a couple of pistols when you use them. And I make them out of brass. I've made them out of copper. I have just the regular ones that we use on the tours for folks, and anything. I mean, it has more to do with having the initial ability than the type of metal that you're using, as long as somebody is kind of open to it. But then again, I should say I've had skeptics that have picked them up, and they've been able to use them as well.
Yeah, I've seen that too. How did you decide on what metal was best for you?
I like copper just because it's heavier, and I do a lot of outdoor dowsing. So I find that copper works better for me just because it's a little heavier and it's harder for the wind to blow it around. I've worked with some genealogy societies on finding unmarked graves in cemeteries. I've worked with a church association on finding unmarked graves, and I've also worked with a developer of land. He had purchased a large amount of land, and they were building homes, beautiful, multi-million-dollar homes in this field in Ohio. And the dozer operator had found what he believed to be several stones that looked like old gravestones. And they were concerned that they would be digging where there was an old farm cemetery. So they actually called me in to to go out and douse that area. And we did find 18.
18 graves?
So, yeah, they decided not to develop that small parcel of land, and they were going to leave it as a small park, which I think is a wise choice.
Oh, yeah. Can you think of all the trouble they'd have if they dug there? Dug
Right.
cellars and built houses?
Oh, yeah. Not only that, it's just disrespectful.
Oh,
too,
terribly
you know.
disrespectful, yeah, but some people just don't care, and
Oh,
they could go
yeah.
ahead and do
Yeah,
that.
I know it.
Right. So, there's different applications that it can be used for. I find it much easier for folks just to grab the rods and have a hands-on experience instead of me standing there instructing how to do it and giving them all the lowdown about it, which I do a little bit at the beginning. But I think it's more beneficial if they don't hear all of that from me and they just grab them and they walk. And as they walk, I'll have them concentrate. If we're in the cemetery, I will have them concentrate on a body in their mind, some imagery, whether it's just an outline of a body or thinking about a grave will help people. And it's your intent. Whatever you are trying to find, whatever the object is that you have intent to find,
Really?
is when the rods will cross. So that's how you differentiate from an underground water stream to a septic tank to the grave of your dog in your backyard or an unmarked grave in a cemetery.
That's exactly what I was just going to ask
whatever
you.
you're trying to find.
How do you determine, how does the rod know what it's going to react to? How do you know what it's going to react to?
Well,
so like you're looking for a stone. That's just amazing to me.
A lot of questions with it.
Yeah.
Some researchers believe, some dousers believe that you're actually just tuning in to your own psychic ability. In other words, when you're concentrating on something so hard that you actually somehow intuitively pick up on what it is that you're trying to find. And I think that's fascinating. It's said that this is one of the rare times that the left brain and the right brain actually work in sync with each other. Now, 80% of people have the ability to use dowsing rods. 80%.
I'm in the 20%. I can't get them to do anything.
Well, you know what? I find that if you work with numbers, and of course I don't know what you do for a living, but if you work with numbers, or if you analyze, if you're analytical, if you're an engineer, if you work with money, that sometimes it's a little bit more difficult for you to be able to douse.
No, that's not my excuse.
That's not you. Okay, well then, you're just unlucky.
I guess I am. Yeah.
Just different, Willie, just different.
I wouldn't give up on it, though. I would keep trying. Did you try more than just one time?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you have you?
Well, mostly I just try at home, just
Oh.
to see if I can get any reaction out of them. But I'm gonna
Try
take
a
them
coat hanger.
to the cemetery next time I go.
Yeah, well, you might want to try that. The easiest thing, though, that I tell people to do is try to do it over a cup of water or a bottle of water. And that is something that's very visual. And even try putting a bottle of water under your arm as you're dousing. In other words, connect with the item that you're trying to douse.
Yeah.
So have a bottle of water on the counter and take a bottle of water and put it underneath your arm as you douse. And that might be just something a little bit more tangible for you to kind of recognize if it's on you.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you
Give
were,
it a shot. I'll be curious.
do you make your own rods, Sherri?
I do. I make basic metal rods, and I sell them for $5. It's just something that helps get people started.
Yeah.
After some of the tours, people are like, "Hey, can we keep these?" And I'm like, "No, but if you got $5, I've got a new set for you."
But
and I also sell copper ones. They're $20. They're more expensive than copper.
Copper's expensive.
It is. But I just want people to try this because it's so fascinating. And I know when I learned how to douse, it's been almost 20 years ago, I was flabbergasted that I had never seen it done before, and I had never heard of it.
I'm going to try that.
And
I
I've
want to
literally
try that.
instructed thousands of people. I mean, it's just fascinating. The folks at the West Virginia Penitentiary, the tour guides there and the investigators, nobody had doused before. The same at the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. I had met up with some of the tour guides there, and it's just something that, 12, 13 years ago, this really wasn't a popular item.
It was just water. They were looking for water. That was about it.
Right. So it is. It's merely the intent that you have. When I was studying the history of dowsing, I mean, there's reported dowsers going back to 1200. It was a popular way to find silver mines in France. They would employ dowsers to go out and walk the fields. And, of course, these dowsers would concentrate on silver. And when their rods would cross, they knew that if they started mining, that they would find silver.
Wow. Did they often...
Vietnam,
they used ash and willow. I'm
sorry?
They used ash and willow way back then, didn't they,
Yes.
pretty much?
Yes. Ash and willow, and I've heard also witch hazel.
Witch hazel?
Is a good tree species to try. Back in the Vietnam War, some of the troops were trained to find enemy tunnels
Really?
by using dowsing rods.
Oh,
So,
my gosh.
You know, I guess you can poo-poo the whole thing, but to know that the military actually
Got to be something there.
instructed, because you could, a good dowser would be able to figure out how wide that tunnel would be. So you would know if you were dealing with a small-scale operation or a large-scale operation. So, you know, just like a good water dowser can tell you how deep the water is, how many gallons per minute you would have, and which way the flow would run.
So do you just get your copper rods at, like, the hardware store?
My husband actually, he gets them. He has a supplier on eBay,
Oh.
and he orders them, and we'll get a shipment in once a year, and then he gets to work on them. My husband's an engineer, so he can douse, Willie.
No
You believe
kidding.
that?
Okay, all right, it's just me. Does your husband investigate with you too?
You know, we've been married 6 years now, and he's always been interested in stuff like that, but he's never gotten the opportunity like this. You know, he did Ireland and Scotland with me, and he goes to the prisons and some of the asylums and things like that. So he enjoys it because he's into that. He's a mining engineer, so he always looks at the stone, and he can tell me some really interesting things about what these buildings are constructed of. There's actually some stones out there that have a magnetic force to them. And so it's interesting to get that from a mining engineer perspective.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
I was just going to say, out of all the places that you have investigated, what is your favorite place to go? What do you think is the most active?
Oh, wow. You know, that's a difficult question because some places are quiet on some nights, and other nights they're really active. So paranormally speaking, I can't give you a favorite hot spot. It'd be too hard to pick one out.
Yeah.
I will tell you that the first time I walked into the West Virginia Penitentiary, I felt an instant connection, like I had been there, done that. I'd like to think that I was on the guard side of it all and not the convict side, in a past life. But it just felt like home to me. And when I had the opportunity to write the haunted history of the West Virginia Pen, I couldn't stop. I mean, it ended up being over 600 pages.
No kidding.
And I just kept drawing more and more from my files and my own personal experiences. And I interviewed over 100 people that had investigated the building and several psychics as well. And I just couldn't stop. And I got to the point where if it got any bigger, I mean, it weighs almost 3 pounds.
Oh, gee.
My husband's like, you've just got to quit writing. He said, do a volume 2 or something.
Yeah, that's it. On to the next book. Since we've gotten back to Moundsville, I know you live in West Virginia. How close are you to there?
I'm about 3 hours south.
Oh, 3 hours?
I'm 3 hours south, down in central West Virginia. I am closer to Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. That one is about a 45-minute drive for me.
All right. Okay.
So I'm happy to be down here. I was in Ohio for 45 years, and I was about an hour away from the Ohio State Reformatory, which was wonderful. But down here, I'm kind of sandwiched between Mothman and a haunted prison and a haunted asylum. So I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. It's almost like being in paradise.
It is. It is from a paranormal perspective.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ancient history here in the mountains, and it's a wonderful place to live. And I'm very lucky to be here and to be doing what I'm doing. So.
But you're certainly successful at it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, Sherri, I did have a question. Going to these places where there's a lot of heavy negativity, have you been ever Have you ever been followed home by one of these entities?
No, I have not been followed home. Now, once again, I'm not a psychic, but I do kind of pick up on things every once in a while, just a sensitive. Everybody's kind of sensitive to things like that. So I've been lucky. I am a big believer in the power of your mind. If you think that somebody's going to cast the evil eye on you, if you think that, what you bought at the antique store is cursed, if you think that, oh my gosh, I can't go here because something really evil and bad's going to follow me home tonight, I think you can kind of attract that. So I've been really lucky that I'm pretty strong-minded. And this is one thing I talk about on my tours and the ghost hunts and stuff is no matter what faith you have, no matter what you believe in, that power, that energy that you have with that thought process can help protect you. It can help protect you. So I'm all for protection. If folks want to say, the St. Michael's prayer before they go in, or if they want to spritz holy water, all over them before they walk into a building and after they come out, that's great because they've got that power of intent and that power,
that's
that
right.
energy behind it. So I'm all for that. But I've been lucky. I haven't had anything bad happen. I'm going to knock on wood here.
So you haven't done anything in the way of like a protection ritual or prayer or whatever? Do you do
if
that?
I ever feel intimidated, I always just love that instant white light that you can put around yourself visually. And prayer is always good, too.
Prayer, yep.
I don't have any type of amulet or talisman or, any type of special ritual that I do when I go into a location. I'm more concerned about running into somebody that's homeless, that's hiding out in a prison somewhere, and actually having like a living attack you, more so than the dead.
Yeah, it's the living you got to watch out for, not the dead.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So, but these buildings are all great. These buildings that I investigate and that other folks go to, it's a wonderful experience. And this year I'm trying something completely new. I told my husband a couple weeks ago, I said, honey, you're not going to believe what I rented out for a ghost hunt. And he's like, is it another asylum? I said, no, I rented out a battleship.
Oh, yeah, the USS North Carolina, right?
Yes, and he said, excuse me? And I said, I rented out a battleship. He said, you mean like a ship?
How many
I said,
guys
yes.
are there?
I said, it's the USS North Carolina. And he's like, oh, my gosh. He's like, that's the most decorated warship of World War II. He knew exactly what it was. And I'm like, yeah. I said, it's mine overnight. He's like, I'm going on that one.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting investigation.
Where is it docked?
It's docked in the Cape Fear River in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Oh.
So it's right across from downtown Wilmington, and I've got it August 8th is the ghost hunt. As a matter of fact, it goes up for sale tomorrow morning at noon.
Really?
Oh,
And they're going to honor your rental.
I'm sorry?
They're going to honor your rental even though it's in August?
Yes.
Well, what is it used, like a living museum type thing?
It is. There's 9 levels to it.
Wow.
It's huge. And, of course, it's a historical landmark. And I'm just honored that they were very open to the investigation. They hold weddings on the battleship as well, which I thought was kind of different. But they need money. They desperately need money for the preservation of it. And it's actually, they're going to dry dock it next year and do some repairs to the exterior. It's been sitting there for about 30 years.
Oh.
And they need to do some repair work. So that's what they do with the fees that they get from the wedding and from the investigations and different events there. They're going to put right back into the preservation of that ship. Now, there's been books that have been written about the hauntings on the USS North Carolina. And there's been some other groups that have gone there and investigated. So it's going to be a pretty interesting night. I'm looking forward to it.
I would think you would be.
Yeah.
I would think you would be, yeah.
What kind of historical things have happened there? Anything of note?
Well, there have been sightings. Now, right off the bat, everybody's like, well, how many people died? How many people died on board that ship? And there were just 10 casualties on board the ship. There wasn't a lot. But there's a night watchman that is on that ship. He actually lives on the ship. And he is one of the ones that has written a book about the ghosts that he's seen. There's been a young man that they have seen going up and down the corridor of the ship. There's been a lot of unexplained sounds and some really good EVPs that people have captured. Now, I have not investigated that ship yet, and this is the only time in 12 years that I have not done an investigation before I have offered it up as an overnight for everybody to do. That made me a little bit nervous until I talked to some other folks that have done investigations there, and it seems to be pretty active. So I feel pretty comfortable with that.
All right. Wow.
That looks like a lot of fun.
I think so, too. And not only that, I'm sure the history alone is really going to intrigue a lot of people that night as they work their way throughout the ship. So
that's one I'd love to be able to join myself.
There you go. You go. You need to get out of New Hampshire and head south.
I do, yeah. I was thinking a little bit farther south right now.
A little bit warmer, too.
Like Key West, maybe, or something.
That could be a pit stop on the way.
Yeah. Sure. Well, go ahead, Gwen.
I was just going to say, unfortunately, we're running out of time.
Can I squeeze in one more quick question?
One quick question.
Okay.
We got 1 minute.
Okay, Sherri, as far as your tours, your Ireland and Scotland tours, are you going to book another one since both of those are now sold out?
There's two of them that sold out for 2016, and I'll probably do one in 2017. I'm working on a Stonehenge
great.
tour and a Tower of London and that kind of thing for England.
All right.
So I've got a few things on the back burner, but yes, I will definitely be going back to Ireland and Scotland.
But not in 2016, just those two tours?
Just those two in 2016. We can't do anything over there in the summertime because there's no air conditioning in the hotels.
Yeah.
That would be miserable.
Well, that'll give you time to save up your pennies. There you go.
There you go, Lynn. I'd love to have you on.
Thank you.
You want to go ahead and give out your websites and where people can buy your books and all that kind of stuff?
Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
My website is hauntedhistory.net. Hauntedhistory.net. And the name of my company is Haunted Heartland Tours. You can purchase my books through the website, or you can get them through Barnes & Noble online or Amazon or any of the other booksellers online.
And you've got 6 to date, is that right, Sherri?
I have 6 to date, and I have one that I'm doing on dowsing.
Wow.
That will be coming out this summer.
All right. Okay.
Who's
excellent.
your publisher, Sherri?
I'm sorry?
Who is your publisher?
I had the History Press for the first couple of books, and the other books I'm self-publishing.
Oh, wonderful.
Because I have found that working with a publisher can kind of be restrictive.
Yeah.
They don't want a certain, word count. They don't want you to go over a certain word count, and I just felt really restricted with that. There's too much information to keep it to, 175 pages.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Okay,
Thank you for asking.
Well, Sherri, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, ditto. Thank you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it tonight, and I would love to be back on.
Oh, we would love to have you back again. We just scratched the surface. We barely got past Moundsville.
No. Got 5 other books to cover here. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sherri. Have a great evening.
All right. You too.
All right.
Thank you, Sherri.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, so that is it for Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience.
Another very quick hour. So thank you, everyone, for listening, and good night.